You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks. This is episode 133. I'm your co-host, Mark Newbold, and joining me today is the man who put Barbie in barbecue. It's Mark Mulcaster. How you doing, mate?
I'm stuffed. I had the biggest steak I've ever cooked in my life earlier on today. I'm literally sweating for proper meat sweats. And that's after, eating 20 odd Easter eggs as well. So, I'm going to be rolling out of this podcast. I assure you of that. How are you, my friend? How's things?
Yeah, no, not too bad. Quiet week, to be honest. Just been plodding through it and drinking loads. There goes my bottle of water. So I'm drinking because it's given me a sore throat. But we're both negative now, which is very, very good. So that's a positive step. Can you be negative and it be a positive step? I don't know. We're okay.
Excellent. That's the main thing, to be honest. As long as you're both all right, I'm sure we're going to have to pause this podcast now, aren't we, for a pee break? Because I know how small your bladder is, mate. So, if you've been drinking,
it is literally like a pee.
Bless you. Busy on the site?
Site's been ticking over quite nicely. It's sort of that calm before the storm with Celebration coming up and Fun Day and such. So the convention season's just sort of starting to ease in now. It feels like a lot of news is being held back for Celebration, which is completely understandable.
Makes sense, yeah.
How about you? How's your week been?
So on Saturday, me and Karen, we joined Autism All Stars in Red Hill at the Belfry for a charity collection. And the Autism All Stars basically is a charity that supports younger and teenage people with, who have been diagnosed with autism, and also, I guess, support for parents and family and friends and stuff. It was a good time. We had a lot of fun. There should have been more of us, actually. There should be more Rebel Legion, but unfortunately, they tested positive during the week, so they had to kind of bow out. But, me and the Princess, we held before and, raised, I think it was about £935 in total on the Saturday amongst us and the other All-Star cosplayers. So it was a pretty successful weekend. Any new acquisitions? Have you had anything come into the collection room this week?
I haven't. I've literally had nothing. Posters have been quiet in general, apart from bills. Always get bills.
Yeah.
But no, nothing at all. It's been weirdly quiet. But then again, I've not ordered anything really. We'll be back from Florida, just over 2 weeks. So I've sorted all my stuff out. That's all up in the top room now, which is great.
Cool.
Making plans to change things around up there as well. But no, nothing new's coming. How about you?
I had a couple of things. One of which I'm looking at right now, in fact I showed you earlier on, is the latest print from Bowman's Green. And that is the rendition of the Way of a Wookiee cover, which is again in the kind of vintage Marvel collection. So that came to me, and I've got number 2 of 25. So these are very limited numbered editions. Thank you to Simon from Bowman's Green for sending that over before he went on his holidays. I do appreciate that. And also I have got the Republic Trooper vintage collection. That was the fan votes, wasn't it?
I believe it was, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that was the vote last year. Other than that, that is about it. Oh, I did pick up from Tesco the little Baby Yoda Grogu Funko Pop key rings. I don't know if you've seen those. They're kind of...
Oh, I love them. They're fantastic.
Yeah, they seem to be reduced in my Tesco's. So I think we only did 3, or there's only 3 different variations in my store, but £4 each. It's like, well, you've got to get all 3 of them, really. You can't not, So
that'd be rude not to.
Totally, yeah. So I've got all 3 of those. So that is really about it. What are we going to start with when it comes to the news?
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yes.
Talking Ahsoka. She was talking to a website called Romper, which is for young mothers. She was chatting to a lady called Elizabeth Angel and her 2 kids. And they got into a conversation about Bryce's life and various other bits and bobs, all based around the fact that it's Easter, and Elizabeth's son mentioned that he's a Star Wars fan. And so this lovely little sort of head-to-head conversation starts between Bryce and this kid. And one of the nuggets from that, one of the many nuggets, because it's a really nice little chat. For example, you learnt that Bryce was friends with Natalie Portman when Natalie was making Phantom Menace, and that she'd known George all of her life because George had directed her dad, Ron Howard, in American Graffiti, and obviously Ron had directed Willow for Lucasfilm. So there's a family connections there. She does say to the kid about the Clone Wars without giving anything away, you're going to love the Ahsoka show that's coming up. I cannot tell you anything, but what I can say is that you being a fan of the Clone Wars will be greatly rewarded. So not a massive surprise that there's going to be Clone Wars elements in Ahsoka, but good to hear it so overtly stated that we're definitely going to be either dipping back in flashbacks or more likely having sort of overhangs of that storyline come forward. Maybe this is where we finally see Tamura Morrison as Captain Rex. You know, you get the feel that there could be some play in that sense. What did you make of those comments?
The Ahsoka series, for me anyway, that is the one that I'm really keenly interested just to see how much they do pull from the Clone Wars, because everything seems to be pointing towards we could do a really heavy, deep dive, and maybe even to a point whereby it might even necessitate us to go back and rewatch some episodes of the Clone Wars just to kind of, remind us of what's going on or what went on back then. And I'm hoping, obviously, if, Dave Filoni is heavily involved, there's going to be some overt Easter eggs, but also some real subtle ones that only hardcore fans will get. This series is definitely going to be the culmination of everything that he's been working towards with Ahsoka since the Clone Wars film. So hopefully that will mean that maybe we're going to see some cameos from some of the, surviving clones and stuff. It'd be great to see Rex, obviously, maybe Wolf and Gregor and that, those crazy guys who were there in Rebels as well. So we know that they're kind of still around, at least until then. So I think it was being an interesting series that will connect the Clone Wars and bring it even more legitimacy into the live action kind of world, and hopefully they can really draw on some characters and some niche characters, a bit like we did in the Bad Batch with the reappearance of Cutler Quain. So that was, pun intended, quite a deep cut as it was, but we could go I'm sure we could go deeper into that, and I think the Ahsoka series has that ability because of Ahsoka as a character. So I think it's going to be a fascinating watch when it kind of comes out. But flicking through this Romper article, I think, he slightly buried the lead a little bit, because the most important question I think she actually dodges, and they do ask why there are no handrails in Star Wars, to which Bryce does kind of say, keep watching. So do you expect that we're going to get some kind of definitive answer in Kenobi as to why there's no handrails in Star Wars?
Wouldn't that be great, though? Because it is one of the most obvious omissions for a film series that's so completely based on beautiful design and logical as much as you can design. All these great big vast walkways, one trip and you're dead. Okay, getting run through with the lightsaber is going to knock you off a bridge, but generally you could literally lose your balance and die in Star Wars. It is definitely a tightrope walking exercise, walking anywhere over any kind of height in Star Wars. You're really taking your life into your own hands. I think, though, going back to the point about Clone Wars coming into Ahsoka, at the end of Season 5, when Ahsoka left the Order after the Wrong Jedi and that whole run of episodes, and sort of went out on her own, and you kind of pick up on that in Season 7 quite nicely, the aftermath of that there is going to be questions that people are going to want to ask. I mean, characters in Star Wars will want to know. Characters within that world, well, whatever happened to Ahsoka, what became of Ahsoka? And we know that she became Fulcrum and other things happened, and there's lots of gaps in that storytelling, and I know some of the E.K. Johnston books sort of tells little bits, and you pick up bits in Rebels and such. But there's certainly gaps and areas to expand on in there. But now we're in live action, that gives us so much more scope to really flesh these things out. So just her saying that, I think, is very positive. If you're a fan of the Clone Wars, you've got Kenobi coming up where you feel that there's going to be stuff. Now, there's going to be stuff, at least thematically, if not visually, but at least thematically, pinging up on stuff from the Clone Wars.
Hello, I'm Dennis Lawson, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
May the 4th is a big day for Star Wars fans anyway, but it's an especially big day if you're a fan of Jeremy Bulloch. The first auction of Jeremy's items goes under the hammer at East Bristol Auctions in Bristol. Lots of stuff. It's all up on Fantha Tracks, what's been revealed so far. You can actually have a look at the auction as well. And there's some lovely photographs of Jeremy in his top room, which is where he kept most of his stuff, his office, which was an amazing room. Of the stuff that you've seen so far, Mark, has anything caught your eye?
Man, yeah, loads. I mean, I went through all 11 pages of the auction catalogue. And a lot of the stuff, it's really nice because it's stuff that Jeremy's picked up on his travels through different conventions and stuff like that. So there's quite a nice selection of autographs by people that are no longer with us. But there's a couple of things. So there's his episode 3 script, and also there's unseen footage from Return of the Jedi, which I think is test footage. So that was shot by Jeremy's half-brother, Robert Watts, and Star Wars producer to most people. So that in itself is going to be quite interesting. And I also saw he's got a Empire Strikes Back movie trailer. And the nice thing is, actually, there's lots of different figures, obviously all Boba Fett figures, every single era of Hasbro and Kenner. And there's probably something that you could pick up so you can actually have not only a memento of the great man, but also you can add to your collection. Well worth a look if you haven't had a chance to do so already.
I think the most fun one has got to be that Carrie autograph.
Yeah.
Jeremy, thanks for the night of hot monkey love, Carrie Fisher. So what a thing to write. What an autograph to have. Like you say, there's loads of stuff from costuming groups and from fan groups all around the world, because obviously Jeremy was one of the very first, along with Prowse and Mayhew, to sort of really get out there and globally do these events. There's 1,000 items, 600 lots. The estimate for the collection, it says 70 to 110,000. Now, I don't know if that's in total for the whole collection or whether that's just for this part 1 auction. I don't know about you, I'm sure it's the same, because he was such a staple of the convention scene, and Maureen and Jeremy were always so friendly and welcoming. It still doesn't quite feel real that we're not going to see him at an event again, does it?
I think I went 2 years without seeing Jeremy and Maureen at one point, and saw them at LFCC, and Maureen was just like, "Oh, hi Mark, how you doing?" I was in my X-Wing pilot costume. I didn't have any kind of named paraphernalia on me, and she remembered me, and I tend to be anyway. At least to me, I feel like I'm relatively forgettable. The fact that she remembered was quite touching and stuff. And there's some fantastic stuff. And if you're fans of like 501st and Rebel Legion merch, there's loads of pins and patches, and in fact, there's a nice 501st buckle as well, which is quite cool. So it doesn't necessarily need to be Boba Fett related per se. It's come from Jeremy, and it's quite nice that actually a lot of fans, because there's so many different auctions, will be able to take away a little bit of Jeremy's collection, add it to their own, and can almost keep his memory living on. So I think that's fantastic.
Fantatrax. Voodoo!
London Film and Comic Con comes back to Olympia on the 8th to the 10th of July, and there's more Star Wars guests announced from the galaxy far, far away. So we've got Bo-Katan, Katie Sackhoff, she's coming to the show. Galactica fans will be happy as well. Max Rebo, Tamara Carlton Woodard, she'll be there as well. And Dawn Dillinger, who was the Brown Rhodian from that episode of Book of Boba Fett, played a few other creatures as well.
First episode, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Nice addition to the guest list, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think so. I mean, and nice to see kind of Katie kind of coming over, hopefully, because I think she has been down to do an LFCC at least a couple of times in the past and may have cancelled for whatever reason. So hopefully she'll make it over. And it's a nice kind of variety of signers, really, haven't we? In fact, we've got Eric Walker from Caravan of Courage, the original Mace, as he likes to call himself. That, and of course, the irrepressible Jeremy Glover, who is kind of like a fairly permanent resident at LFCC, but that's cool because I have got his General Veers autograph 3 times, but I don't have his Christatos autograph from For Your Eyes Only, so I might have to go and sweeten his coffers a little bit and get that one as well. So yeah, but it's it's great, and I'm really excited to see Misty Rosas because I do have a little crush on her. Looking forward to meeting her.
Chris Bartlett coming over from The Mandalorian as well. Dorian Kingi, who was Cad Bane. There's a good bunch of characters there, good bunch of actors. Some stalwarts as well. Jack McKenzie, Sid Ragg, obviously Julian Glover you just mentioned. It'd be great to see Eric Walker, like you say. He's at Celebration at the Skywalking Through Neverland Bash on the night before Celebration as well. He's appearing at that. So he's a busy fella, so hopefully Fantha will have a chance to catch up with him there as well ahead of this. LFCC building up to be quite the event. In addition to the guests that have been announced, the return of the Star Wars Zone. So we're going to have a dedicated Star Wars area at LFCC. Any news on that you can tell us?
No, not at the moment, because, you know how these things are. All best plans and that seem to happen 2 or 3 weeks before the actual event. But last time it was really fun. I'm hoping and I believe the Rebel Legion will be there in some official capacity, and I'm sure Fantatrax will be there in either some official or unofficial capacity. So if you do end up going, make sure that you do head over to the Rebel Legion booth, because I'm sure there will probably be some Rebel Legion members and some Fantatrax members who will want to say hi and, have a good old chinwag.
Absolutely. There's going to be Star Wars guests in the Star Wars Zone, and as you say, hopefully as many costuming groups as we can get. But we'll be there planning to speak to as many Star Wars guests as we possibly can and bring it to you on Making Tracks and Fantatrax TV. So stay tuned and we'll bring all the news to Fantatrax as more guests are announced.
for everything in one location. Daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds. Bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
So with Indiana Jones 5 coming next summer to cinemas all around the world, we've got some more Star Wars guests joining the world of Indiana Jones. There's been a few over the years, obviously Harrison Ford being the major one, but also this time round, our big bad is Mads Mikkelsen, who we'll know as Galen Erso from Rogue One, also Grindelwald from The Secrets of Dumbledore. He was speaking to The Hollywood Reporter about all sorts of stuff, his Potter experience, but also, naturally, Indiana Jones. And whilst he couldn't really give much detail away because, you know, those snipers never miss, he does say Raiders was one of my favourite films and it just oozed that golden period of serials from the 40s. And that's in the 5th film as well. They're going heavily back to the 1st and 2nd film and getting that original feel, the original Indy, something dense and epic. And he does say it felt like a Spielberg film, even though obviously it's James Mangold making it with the same vision. So what do you make of that? I mean, obviously Last Crusade had a wonderful feel to it as well. Crystal Skull gets, I think, very unfairly knocked. I think Crystal Skull is a perfectly good adventure. But if you're going to go for a tone, you kind of want to go for Raiders, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that is the thing, because I think the tone of Crystal Skull, there's just a little bit too much levity in it. And I know there is levity in Indiana Jones, but there's something really dark about both Lost Ark and obviously Temple of Doom, especially. That's quite a dark film. So good old Mads, he's doing the franchise round, you know, Star Wars, Harry Potter and Indiana Jones. And I mean, to be honest, I saw The Secrets of Dumbledore the other day, but I did think that Mads Mikkelsen actually made a much better Grindelwald than Johnny Depp. So, you know, everything that at least he does, the roles that he takes on, he does add some weight to. So I'm going to be really excited and curious just to see what he brings the Indiana Jones franchise.
Yeah, I mean, he's a quality actor. Yeah. You're a Bond fan, and he was in Bond, obviously.
Chief, yep.
Exactly. You know, he has been in a lot of franchises now. You know, he's one of those rare ones. He's a bit like Julian Glover. He's been in Potter, he's been in Bond, he's been in Star Wars, he's been in Indy. They're probably in quite a unique little group when you think about it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, actually. Yeah, was Glover in Potter, or was it Game of Thrones? You're thinking?
Yeah, he was Aragog in Potter. He was the voice of Aragog.
Oh, of course he was. Yeah, you just don't see him because he's a spider. Yeah, it's a massive creepy crawly. Yeah, you're right. And I suppose that's the thing, you know, I think there's some actors, and I think actually Johnny Depp is a good example of this, who are great character actors, but they kind of get to that point where they're just a little bit too famous, and that's a risk. So when you do see them in like something like Harry Potter, where you need to believe the character that you're seeing rather than kind of going, oh, it's Captain Jack, even though the two characters are nothing alike, you've got to really kind of work hard. And I think Mads Mikkelsen, he's still the right side of just being a little bit unknown. Whilst hugely respected and a really good actor, he's just not that well known enough in, let's say, Hollywood per se, to where I think people will go, oh, that's so-and-so. They're more likely to go, oh, that's that guy from Rogue One or that James Bond film or whatever. But I don't necessarily think he's kind of like a household name at the moment, which I think actually works to his advantage when he is in so many of these franchises.
I'm very keen to see him stacked up against Harrison Ford's Indiana Jones. Yeah. I think he's got that look, hasn't he? He's got a certain look about him, that classic movie actor look. You could transpose that face into a 40s or 50s film quite comfortably and it wouldn't feel out of place. And he does say, bearing in mind Harrison is, he's in his 80s now, or turns 80, I think, in July. You know, he says about his physicality, and he says the first time I met him, he's an insanely powerful person, not just as an actor, but physically. I remember the first day we were shooting, it was a night shoot. We stopped at 5 a.m. and then he got on his mountain bike and went biking for 50 kilometres. It's a monster of a man, a very nice monster. So I think that's a very nicely put way of saying what great shape clearly Ford is in. We've seen photographs, we've posted stuff on Fantha of him out, doing his mountain biking and stuff. Just insane that he's still got that physicality, and for Mikkelsen to mention that. So next summer we get Indiana Jones 5. We'll be talking about it here on Fantha Tracks and on some of our Fantha Tracks TV shows, of which we will bring more news very soon, because we are making plans to do some rather groovy cool stuff once Kenobi lands and other shows follow. So stay tuned. Fantha Tracks Radio and Fantha Tracks Television.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Star Wars fan, Fantha Tracks fan.
So the other day, Rupert Friend, who is playing the Grand Inquisitor in the upcoming Obi-Wan Kenobi series, was on the red carpet for his new Netflix series, The Anatomy of a Scandal, which apparently is meant to be really good. And he was stopped by a journalist from Hey You Guys website. And of course, the journalist moved swiftly on through the questions about Anatomy of a Scandal to, of course, the most important questions, which is about Obi-Wan Kenobi. So let's have a quick listen as to what they were talking about.
We've seen you maybe in the trailer for a certain Star Wars thing. You can't tell us anything, I know, but how excited should fans be for this? Because it went a long time to see you and Hayden back in these roles and back on the big screen.
Yeah, I mean, if it's possible to be any more excited than folks already are, I would be. I think it's one of the most thrilling additions to the Star Wars canon. I think Ewan McGregor is doing things with that role that is a dream for fans of the original films. We can't obviously have Alec Guinness back, but I just think Ewan is just absolute born to play that part. And wonderful cameos from people I obviously can't tell you, but Easter eggs galore. And it's a thrilling ride.
Fantastic. Can't wait. Thanks so much for your time. Pleasure. Cheers.
One of the things he says is it's one of the most thrilling additions to the Star Wars canon, which to me says he's fairly familiar with the Star Wars canon. To use that phrasing and just be that overt about it, of course, he's in it, so he's going to hype it. Who wouldn't? Yeah. Ed Wood was hyping Plan 9 from outer space, for goodness sake. So, you're going to hype whatever you're in. But that just read to me like he's more into it than just a casual actor coming into the show. Interesting line. We obviously can't have Alec Guinness back, but I think Ewan was born to play that part, which of course we know that because we've watched him for years and that's evident. But of course now we're in a technological world where, strictly speaking, you could actually have Alec Guinness back if you wanted to. We had Peter Cushing come back, so anything's possible. But we've got Ewan and it's working perfectly leading up to A New Hope. The bit that really stands out there, wonderful cameos from people that I obviously can't tell you, but Easter eggs galore, which is perfectly apt for this time of year. We know Hayden's back as Anakin. We know Vader's in it. But then you've got to think beyond that. You've got to think, well,
that would be fantastic.
Got Guy Henry back to play Tarkin? I mean, that would make sense. Have they got Krennic in there? That would make sense. There's lots of characters. If they want to bring these characters in, they could do it.
For those kind of cameos. I mean, that would blow people's mind. If you had a Yaddle cameo in Kenobi, everybody would be celebrating and jumping for joy. Rupert, he's at prime age. He's I think born 2 or 3 months after me in 81. So he's known Star Wars all his life. He would have only been 17, 18 when the prequels kind of first came out. So undoubtedly he was going to be watching the prequel trilogy and probably seen the OT hundreds of times and stuff. It works well in favour of a good performance. I think we're going to get that from Rupert and hopefully, some interesting and exciting cameos. Is there one person then, one character that you'd like to see as a cameo come back in Kenobi? Besides the obvious, besides Qui-Gon and Yoda.
I think for Luke, because we know Luke's in it as a young actor playing Luke, so we know there's elements there and that Obi-Wan or Ben is watching over his early years from a distance, but you kind of get the sense, I always got the sense that there was, especially after Revenge of the Sith, that there was fairly regular contact with Bail Organa. There's some sort of connection there, being up to date and appraised on what's going on. But I think with young Luke, I would love to see a younger Biggs and a younger Cammy and Fixer, especially seeing as we saw Cammy and Fixer in Book of Boba Fett. See those kids hanging out at Tosche Station and doing their thing there. Luke's first Skyhopper. Yeah, you can imagine how it was, because we're back to the homestead, which is somewhere that we always love to go. I think on a bigger scale, I would like to see the Emperor. That will be interesting to see what's happening on Coruscant, not just as a flickering sort of over there in the distance, but quite overt, because clearly if you've got Inquisitors, the threat of the Jedi is still prevalent to the Empire and to the Emperor specifically. For him to give them the resources they need to go out and do what they've got to do, and the command structure and all the other elements that go with it, this massive war machine is still filtering stuff to hunt down the Jedi that are left. I think that would be quite interesting to see as well.
One thing I've been thinking about is it would be fantastic. I mean, I think it's probably a bit of a stretch, but I would quite like to see a Padme Amidala cameo. Either some kind of deleted scene or some extra material from Revenge of the Sith not unused, or Natalie Portman back for, a flashback or something. It's not like they haven't gone to that well with Darth Vader and Darth Vader comics. It's not like he becomes Darth Vader and then he forgets Padme. So I think whilst it would be an interesting story point to see Vader purely focused on hunting down Jedi. I think just to be consistent with the other storytelling and the other Star Wars canon is to maybe see a bit of a tortured Vader and to kind of see some kind of regret or some kind of, you know, him thinking and flashing back to Padme and all that kind of stuff and what might have been.
That's a great point, because Joby Harold just say, you know, that the Republic has crumbled, everything you know from the past has gone, and it's almost like PTSD for Obi-Wan. You know, he's in this traumatic state of everything he knew, everything he's ever known has gone, and here he is on this desert planet in the middle of nowhere, so all of his support structure's gone. But for Anakin as well, Anakin realised at the end of Revenge of the Sith he'd been duped and was now powerless to do much about it and has to play the long game, which the Sith do so well. And that plays out at the end of Return of the Jedi, as we know. I think there's parallels there between the two characters, both being in desolation, away from everything that they both grew up with and know and love. Because as much as Anakin turned his back on the Jedi and chose the dark path, if you think about it, he still lost the support structure. He had nothing to go back to.
Yeah.
Any backdoor exit plan he might have ever had in the back of his mind was gone when the temple was sacked. And he sacked the temple. So he's made his own bed and now has to lie in it. But for Obi-Wan, you know, he was there when it was all kicking off, and, you know, he knows Yoda survived because they were on the Tantive 4 together. You know, he knows that Bail survived. He knows that certain things are in place, but you've got to wonder what else he knows. So to parallel those two could be really interesting.
I think it's probably about time we wrap up this episode, and, you know, we are literally counting down the days to Kenobi, so we're not long now until we can actually sit back and have a good old chinwag after the first couple of episodes get dropped. So, with that in mind, if anybody does have a Kenobi question, or a Kenobi thought, or Kenobi theory, or a Star Wars question, Star Wars thought, or Star Wars theory, or Star Wars complaint, by all means send them over. So, Mark, can you let the listeners know how they can get in touch?
I will do my best. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fantatrax.com or check out the free Fantatrax app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. I'm being mocked. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fantatrax.com. Didn't have any this week, but hopefully next week we will dive into all the pre-celebration and pre-fan fun day and Kenobi news. Whenever you want, we'll talk about anything. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fantatrax, so be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantatrax intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks only music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember, tune in to Good Morning Tatooine, live Sunday evenings, 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube, and check out Fantatrax Radio on Fridays at 7 p.m. for new episodes of The Fantha from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, and Cannon Fodder.
You can go and die.
Go and die now.
But I will actually like to echo, if you haven't already, do check out Good Morning Tatooine, because we get some fantastic guests on here, and only the other day we had the brilliant Carl Bayliss join Brian, and it was a good solid episode. Until next week, my friend, you look after yourself, and of course to everybody else, make sure you try as hard as you possibly can to not eat all your Easter eggs at once. But if you do, don't worry about it, and if you don't, well done you, you're a better human than I am. And of course, until next time, stay safe, and may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantatrax Radio, it's The Fantha from Down Under.